investigators, Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy, with our weekly roundup of what's been happening in investigations this week. So we're the investigation program on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you name it. We're the people that enjoy taking statements and love writing reports and doing investigations and surveillance. So, you know, one day we'll be on our deathbeds, we'll be past our use-by date and hit our expiry date, and we'll be there going, oh, geez, I wish I didn't put that in paragraph 2 in that statement for public liability back in 1963. That's what we do because we love investigations and we regret our mistakes, but hey, too bad that happens. So sad news today to start off our week, unfortunately. For those of you around my age, you'll remember this person. Diana Rigg, who played Emma Peel in The Avengers, passed away. And we used Diana in one of our YouTube videos to impress a point. So just in short tribute to Diana, quick video.
I'm not prepared to believe anything until I've made a thorough investigation.
Just one more thing.
I'm not prepared to believe anything until I've made a thorough investigation.
Really good advice from Diana Rigg playing Emma Peel. I think she's Dame Diana Rigg, but rest in peace, Diana Rigg. Very sad day. As promised, people, today we're going to be looking at bug sweeping. Now, our special guest today, Ian, he's not a bug installer. No, no, no. He is a bug sweeper. So let's get straight into it.
Sure.
Ian, look, it's really great to have you here. A lot of people have really been looking forward to this and expecting to see it, but you've been really busy. Ian, can you tell us who you are, what is your business called and what you do, please?
Sure, it's lovely to be here. Thank you very much. My name's Ian Vickers. I'm running a business called Speakeasy Communication Security. I've been doing so for about 30 years. I'm a qualified comms tech specialist. Was trained many years ago by Telstra, who were the main trainers in those days. They trained pretty well everybody in the industry. So I had a good broad 5-year course to get me going, and since then I've sort of expanded out and I started this type of business off. I was a tech before, communications tech. It's an industry that I suppose it's covered by a term TSCM, Technical Surveillance Countermeasures. It covers a myriad of things where you obviously going into clients' premises for inspection, electronic and physical, looking for devices that aren't there. And I've been doing that for about 30 years now. So I've seen it all. I've worked all over the world, and I stick mainly to Australia these days. I'm attempting to semi-retire, but that's it in a nutshell. I'm basically still running the business. It's really busy. It's a lot busier than I want it to be, actually. But you've got to do what you've got to do, and I'll eventually get to semi-retire, I suppose. But yeah, that's it. And it's largely looking for devices that are covert, that are hidden for whatever reason. It may be personal, it may be business, it may be government. It's there to gather information and obviously undermine or follow through investigations that they may be having into a company that's basically of their interest, or a person of interest, which is what I'm doing at the moment. Largely is domestic violence. There's just so much of it. I'm flat to the boards trying to keep up with it. So it's there's plenty to keep me going. It's an interesting industry, and I don't know whether you have any questions that you want to raise about that issue, but if so, fire away.
Yeah, during my research about you, Ian, I found an ABC interview you did in 2009. And in that interview, this is a great one, it's fantastic. You talk about the reasons people are bugged as sex, money and power in that interview. Is that still the case today?
Basically, yes. It's sex, money, and power is it in a nutshell. Really, it pretty well covers every instance that you'd come across. And you know, as I said, we're dealing with jobs that are domestic lower business, medium to large business, to government departments and so forth like that. Where there's intrigue, where there's volatility, where there's money, you have this industry sort of around the edges of that, and you just don't know what you're dealing with until you meet the client and find out what their problems are, and then you've got to ask a lot of questions, sort of zero down to what's going on, what are the likelihoods of it happening, and all the security stuff that you need to think of, so as you can target your investigations for, to help them out in their situation. So once you've got the full range of information you need to sort of hone down what the heck's going on. So it's certainly it keeps me busy anyway.
Good on you. Now, what sort of equipment do you use? Can you just talk us through some of that, please?
Well, there's a lot of equipment. I suppose the most basic stuff, your eyes and your mind. You've got to analyse, and physical is a very important part of the equation, because a lot of the devices you're going to come up against may not necessarily be transmitting devices, or they may not be transmitting at the time. So you've got to do a good physical inspection, even dead or dormant stuff. You've got to be able to locate that without the gear, because when you haven't got any signals or anything to help you, it can be difficult.
Okay, so you've heard domestic violence is where it's all at, and he's flat chat with it. He is a very busy man. Now, you just heard him say, that his eyes and his hands are important equipment. Everybody thinks it's $30,000 machines and $50,000. Yeah, he's got all that, and he knows how to use it because he's technically trained in it. But getting up into the ceiling, crawling around and looking for something that doesn't fit's important.
The gear, I suppose you'd start with basic torches and your ladders and all that sort of stuff, working up to wideband radio receiving gear, which is a bit like a radio, if you like, but it doesn't listen to one station at a time. It listens to millions and millions of stations all at the same time as it's going through its scanning. So if you strike a signal in the relative area where you are, it will alert you to the fact that it's picked something up. Generally, depending on the type of gear, it'll lock onto, can lock onto the signal, and then it can go through the identification process or the location process, where you zero in on the thing and basically find it as carefully as you can, because you don't want to alert anybody that may be monitoring the fact that you're onto them. So you've got to go in carefully and locate it very carefully without making too much noise, and basically say, well, look what I've got here. Obviously, you're going to give the situation away straight away. But look, apart from radio gear, there's various types of radio gear that'll pick up video signals, gear that'll pick up audio signals, and a lot of the gear will pick up both. You use things like nonlinear junction detectors. They're a device that will locate a piece of electronic equipment, say hidden in a couch or in a bookshelf or in a ceiling, sitting on a ceiling, the ceiling plaster or tiles. It'll actually locate the device due to nonlinear junctions in electronic equipment, which will identify the thing, whether it's working or not. If it's a piece of electronic equipment with this sort of substances in it, it'll pick the thing out, and you can identify a device, say the other side of the ceiling plaster, simply by the way this thing operates and locates electronic circuitry rather than radio signals. So you're looking at gear like that, spectrum analyzers, which you can actually see what you're looking at. I use a lot of near field gear, which is very easy to locate or to identify and locate signals very quickly. I've got a few other bits and pieces. I do a lot of domestic violence work these days, and in that we find a lot of car trackers. There's quite a lot of car trackers around these days. They're easy to get at. They're easy to buy. They're not overly expensive for even the better ones. They're not overly expensive now, and you find a lot of them because people just don't think they're going to get caught. So what I use there is a jammer, a mobile phone jammer, because within a tracking device there is a mobile phone chip, which is the way you communicate. In the better ones, there's a mobile phone chip, so you in fact get messages from the device when the car's moving, or if you're just inquisitive about where the car is, you can ring it and find out where the vehicle is at the time, or if it's moving, or if it's been parked there for an hour or two or whatever. So with the jammer, it takes the signal away, if you like. It takes the network away from the mobile phone. So what happens is when you release the jammer, the mobile phone searches for network, and I have a wideband scanner sitting there waiting for a signal to start up. So you've got to turn your own phones off, and anybody that might be around, you've got to keep the phones away. And you then turn the jammer off, you'll see the signal start up, and you'll know you have an active device in the car. Quite often the device may be flat because most of them are battery powered, so you've got to actually get under the thing and under the bonnet and check for hardwired ones, check for things in the wheel arches, and you find them. They're there. And what people don't seem to realise is when you find a car tracker, there is a mobile phone chip in it, and whoever's interrogating the chip, or the things ringing you, you're in the frame. I mean, it's your phone that's being rung or has rung it, so you're a dead duck basically. The police will be very happy to have a chat to you and pop you behind bars for a little while. A lot of
great tip. Well done, Ian. Okay, so yeah, you can have a tracker in your own vehicle, but you go and buy one of those trackers off one of those tracker sales places, and you go and stick it in someone else's vehicle and you stalk them, you can be in serious trouble because they can get that straight back to your phone. The technicians can. That's what they're paid to do. So you've been warned, don't go using trackers for your surveillance activities. But what's the most number of listening devices you've found in one home or one office, for example, or one business?
Well, the one that comes to mind is, it even boggled my mind. It was a government department here. I won't say which one it was, but I was called in by one of the directors of this organisation to have a look around and look for cameras. And lo and behold, I found 7 cameras that had been legally put in. It never got to the news because it basically it was kept quiet. I was under obviously a situation where I wasn't. It was confidential basically. But look, the whole place was full of cameras. It had been put in by management. I think it was a management union thing, and they're everywhere. They're built into they're smoke detectors. But when you shone a very bright lead torch across them, you got to flick back, and I thought, boy, that looks a bit like a lens, and it was hidden behind a little bit like flywire, like a mesh. Sure enough, I got up and had a look at the first one, lifted the ceiling tile, and it wasn't a smoke, or wasn't just a smoke detector. It had cabling going back to their IT room, back to media converters, and then into the network, basically, so as you could access it from anywhere in the world. So I did a report as usual and took lots of pictures, and 7 devices, which in one place they were everywhere, outside the CEO's office, so you could see who was going in to see him, and 2 in the boardroom, and down alleyways and entrance doors, and they were everywhere. And they were put in professionally. It wasn't just thrown in by somebody. It was done professionally within the organisation. So it was it blew my mind because I hadn't struck anything quite that organised and illegal before, and it's come back a couple of years now, but it certainly made me more aware that weird things like that can happen, because I was literally looking at it and I have all the photographs to prove it. But anyway,
Okay.
it's done.
On that subject, on that subject, Ian, if I go down to the Spy Shop and spend $300, can I set myself up in a bug sweeping business in competition with you and take over from there, mate?
It'd be lovely if everybody did that. It'd do me a great favour, because look, you can buy stuff at bug shops, and look, some of the stuff, the upper end stuff, is probably may help you, but I do, as I said, a lot of domestic violence work, and people do go in and buy these $300, $400, $500, $600 things, and they work to an extent. But the bottom line is most people don't use them properly, for one, and two, they're very limited in what they can do. So people generally turn it on, wind up the intensity, and believe there are bugs everywhere, because it's picking up wireless from everywhere in the house, basically. What it is, there is wireless everywhere, because you turn the TV on, it works. You turn the wireless on, and it works. There's RF all over the place. But everybody makes the mistake of not using the gear properly, because they've got it too high intensity, and it just goes off all the time. So you need to turn them right down. But to answer your question, look, you may, if you're lucky, get something that's covering enough bandwidth to pick up what you're dealing with, if you are dealing with something. But the chances are you're not going to find things, especially the sneakier things that are out there with cheap gear. I mean, it's the same as anything. You get what you pay for. If you pay $500, you're going to get a $500 detector. A good one's going to cost you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, to buy a good unit that you can rely on. And you will have a lot more success with something like that. So if it's a very basic device, you might find it. If it isn't, you probably won't find it. So you're wasting your time and your money. Most people use them once and go, well, it's driving me crazy because it goes off all the time. So they just put it in the cupboard and it's never used again. So a lot of money for very little payback. So I wouldn't recommend it. No, that's not the way to do it. If you have a problem, it's worthwhile spending a little bit of money and getting it looked at properly, and then you know for sure whether you've got a problem or not. If you've got a problem, well, you then have to deal with it. So we can help you there. But if you don't find it in the first place, you could have an ongoing problem that's there for a long time, and depending on how it's powered. So I would recommend against it.
Okay, so almost 31 years in the industry.
Yep.
With you, what's been the biggest change you've seen over that time, Ian?
Well, it's probably a lot more than 31 years, because I've been a tech, I hate to even think how long, but doing TSM work, that's 31 years. I suppose the biggest change is, like when I first started, it was all analog. There really wasn't any or much radio stuff in offices. And if you went to a job and you went onto a floor of a business in St Kilda Road, you wouldn't pick any signals up, because there were very few, if any. So if you got a signal, it was, wow, what the hell's that? You know, you've actually picked up a signal in the office. Whereas now you go into an office and you're just surrounded by RF. You've got so many things that talk back to your routers and so forth like that. Your printers, your cordless phones. You got that much stuff around now that what I try to do is get as much of the installed infrastructure turned off by the IT department if I can. Sometimes you can't, because the IT department might be part of the problem, so you've got to be careful what you're doing. But where you can, you get all your WAPs, your wireless access points, turned off, which eliminates a lot of the signals you pick up. Things like call centres and so forth. You might have 100 headsets, wireless headsets going. So there's 100 signals. You know, it's terrifying. You've got to go around and basically try and fight your way through. Because if you're smart and you wanted to set something up, you would work out what the frequency of the equipment is you're dealing with, and you would put something in there as close to that frequency as you can, so it'll snuggle in there and do its job, and it'll look like a headset, or it'll look like a wireless access point or something like that. So you really need to have your wits about you, and where you can, turn stuff off now because it's everywhere. So analog was easy. It's got more difficult, obviously, over the years. You've gone digital and you've got all your IP phones and things now. I suppose on the internet you just put in surveillance device now and you'll have a zillion different things you can spend your money on and buy, and a lot of them are fine. A lot of them work really well. So as far as getting gear goes, you've got a treasure trove on the internet to buy. Whereas that just didn't happen in the early days. There was nothing about. So I suppose that's the biggest change from literally no signals to signals here, there, and everywhere. Even in houses, I mean, you've got routers, you've got things hanging off routers now that obviously can be used. Google Home, Alexas, things like that. If they're set up the right way, you can actually use those as a surveillance device, and it's part of your legitimate installed infrastructure in your house. But if one of the partners is up to no good, you can use that, and you just look at it and think, well, that's safe. I mean, it's a Google Home or whatever. But in fact, it could be your worst enemy. So all that stuff now exists. It didn't 20, 30 years ago. It just didn't exist. So there's a myriad of stuff now you've got to be aware of and act accordingly.
Okay. Can you give me one last question, just because of the interest in this? Can you give us an example of a particular satisfied client, or alternatively an intriguing case that comes out of Ian's war stories from memory over the time? One that intrigued you.
There's a million things, I suppose, happened over the years. I actually had an instance about a week and a half ago, which is a really, really recent one. I was doing a domestic violence job in a house, and I do so much of it now because I work for a lot of the government organisations that look after ladies that are under sort of dangerous situations. I was at a job and I actually discovered a car tracker under a car. It wasn't working; it was flat. I was at a job and I actually discovered a car tracker under a car. It wasn't working, it was flat. The guy in question had got out of jail that day. He was just out. And I found this thing. I was actually talking to a police detective about what I'd found, and I was taking a lot of pictures of it. And next thing I've got a car pulling up, sort of parking in the, or not parking, but stopping in the middle of the road behind my car. And I thought, what's this guy up to? And he sort of, he drew attention to himself because he was so obvious. But I do believe he had actually turned up to remove this device. It wasn't the guy who'd put it on. By his description, he wasn't the same bloke, but he was there to take this device off the car so as this guy didn't get, the original guy didn't get caught. And I just found it. I was probably beat him by 10 minutes. So it just shows you that if I'd been there 10 minutes later, I wouldn't have found anything because it wouldn't have been there. So things can change. I suppose in my line of work, if you've got a problem, it's best to get onto it early. I always say, look, while there's volatility, while there's something happening, get someone like me in because you're more likely to find something while there's volatility happening because people want to know what's going on. They want to be one step ahead. And in this case, this guy didn't want to go back to jail. Yeah, but I'm afraid he would have been going back to jail because his SIM card was in this thing, and the police would have said, well, don't pass go straight to jail, and away he would have gone. And I've had a couple of instances of that where guys have actually put a device on, been in jail, and before they've gone in, they've put a second one on, and they've been caught. So when they get out, they're straight back in again. So terrifying. But I suppose that's one of the many things. And the woman was very, very appreciative that in fact I'd found this thing. It was dead, as I said. It hadn't been charged for quite a long time, but it was there. So if it's there, you can find it because you've just got to no equipment involved. You've got to just know what you're looking for, know where to look, and know what you're looking at. And sure enough, there was this thing hidden on the one of the chassis members up the front of the car, on the inside of the chassis member, so you couldn't see it when you looked under from the driver's side where it was put, but you went around the passenger side and looked right across with a good torch, you could see this lump sitting there that didn't look like part of the car, or should have been part of the car, and sure enough, it wasn't. By the time you pull it off and actually photograph it at close range, you can be sure. Check there's a SIM card in it, you know, and a lot of this gear, there are marks on them. So if you actually Google the numbers or names or whatever on the thing, usually it'll tell you exactly what the device is. So I could report back to the police and the woman, and she was happy and job done.
Yeah, that would have filled in a lot of missing information for her at times in the past too. So it usually
when you do actually find something, it does stun the person, even though they might be wary or almost sure there's something there. When you actually show them something, it tends to blow their mind, which is, I suppose, fair enough. You've actually been presented with evidence that what you're worried about actually does exist. So, yeah, it's good to get those. It's always good to find something. There's not always something there. A lot of the work is just routine, but it's always good to find something. So I'd recommend, if you have any problems, get in early, at least get some advice. Check your pricing, because the pricing does vary quite dramatically. You don't always get a better service for more money. So just watch out who you're dealing with, and you're always welcome to give me a call if you have a problem. I can give you some advice before we do anything. So that's my advice.
Good on you, and I'll put your website up and the contact details underneath our recording, mate. I've gone over the 5 minutes I promised that I would take of your time by 20 minutes. It was that interesting, I couldn't help myself.
That's fine.
The day I asked you to do this, you just said, yes, I'm doing it. And that was it. You were so on side. I really appreciate it, Ian. You're a very busy man. you got extra busy during these times that we live in at the moment. But you wanted to tell people about it, and it's been really interesting, and I couldn't thank you more for that, Ian. So thanks for coming on.
A pleasure indeed. No, lovely to speak, and look forward to talking again.
Thanks, Ian. Let's go to industry associations. Sound like a whole bunch of old people gathering around and singing the national anthem. Okay, so Insurer, who employs private investigators, has come out and said that anyone that works for us through an investigation agency has to be a member of an industry association. Now, that's fine. They can do that. Glad they do. I'm a member of 4, and I have another 4 of my own, which I guess I'm the boss of, so I'm a member of 8 industry associations. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if the client says to you, I want you to write the reports in Egyptian hieroglyphics on toilet paper and send those in to me, and that's the way it's going to be for investigations from now on into the future, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my toilet paper, and I'm going to get my pen, and I'm going to write it in Egyptian hieroglyphics, and I'm going to send it in to the insurance company. Now, there are a bunch of dickheads on social networking who are saying, oh, you've got to be a member of this association, you've got to be a member of that association. If you are an Australian graduate, Australian Security Academy student, and you have on your certificate a gold sticker there that says you're a member of the Association of Investigation, Risk and Loss Adjusting Professionals. You are. Don't listen to anybody on social media who's on Surveillance Investigators Australia or anywhere else like that, in the other hate groups for investigators that get on there and gossip amongst themselves, right? Don't listen to them. They haven't got a clue. Most of them, they're not graduate students of mine, so they're just jealous of you, the graduate student that is automatically a member of an association. Now, that's because they took the option of getting the cheap course that doesn't do that. So, they missed out all the way around. So they're loud on social media about it. Forget it. If you have that gold sticker on your Australian Security Academy qualification, you are a member of that association. It is the only association in Australia that recognises industry best practice for private investigation agencies. It's the only association in Australia that has provided $1 million worth of in-kind support to the RSPCA inspectorates all around Australia. It is the only investigation industry association in Australia where you can approach me as a member of it and get guidance and advice. And if I don't know, I'll ask Pat Flynn and he will know. So, if you want the right advice, you contact me. Now, I'm not going to go to 18,000 students. Here's a letter confirming that you're a member of an industry association to keep a client happy. At any time, if you don't like the fact you've got a gold sticker on your certificate that says you're a member of an industry association, go and pay the $180 a year and join another one. I'm a member of them all. I've got a membership book here and I'm a member of this one and I'm a member of that one and I'm a member of another one. You can just go and do it, right? But if you are an Australian Security Academy graduate student, good luck to you. You're automatically a member of an industry association. That's it. No argument. Well done. Well done, graduate students. You're a member of that association. So that's really, really important. Don't let anyone tell you you're not a member of that association. Just a quick look at some...
Just gotta let it go.
I often sit and wish that I could just change my past. To think about you, Dad, there's so much shit that I could ask.